Hey everybody, I'm Tarek Merchant, and this is another episode of Tea Time. I'd like to welcome my guest today, Coach Brian Ward. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tarek. Thanks for having me on today.
No problem. So, before we get started into some of the topics of discussion we want to talk about, I wanted to give you a chance to give a quick background about yourself, where you come from, how you got involved with sports, tennis in particular, and then your career as a college coach.
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota. I grew up playing basketball and baseball, and then got into tennis a little bit, actually because my sister played, and then a couple of family friends encouraged me to play a little bit more, so I picked it up, and then had some really good coaching, and after that just kind of fell in love with the sport and kept playing and decided tennis was the route to go for me. So that's what I did with it, and luckily I was surrounded by coaches that were really enthusiastic and promoted the game, which helped me, obviously build a passion for it as well. So that was fun, and through that, played through high school, played some junior tournaments. Kind of started a little bit late compared to a lot of people, so had to play catch up. And then did that throughout college. I started my college career at Creighton University, and then after 2 years there, I transferred to Georgetown. And I played my final 2 years at Georgetown, and then after that, I love the sport. I wanted to continue to be around it, and so I decided to pursue graduate school at Georgetown. And while I did that, I got into college coaching, and I've been doing it ever since.
Nice. So you talked about how you started tennis a little bit late, right? And I know
Yep.
that as a player, you weren't putting up the same results as some other kids who are eventually at the same level you played at, right? Did
Yep.
you play other sports? What was the other sports you did, and do you think it helped you become a better tennis player eventually once you got to college?
Yeah, so I spent, the majority of my childhood playing basketball and baseball. And I think there's a ton of crossover in basketball in particular in terms of the footwork and the movement piece. But then also baseball with the hand-eye coordination and everything, I think that goes into it. I think it helps. And, picking up tennis a little bit later, I think sometimes you see kids will get burned out on a sport if they've been doing it for too long. And that wasn't the case for me with tennis because I started later. And, everybody else was a lot better than I was when I started playing. But, I tried to work hard at it. I felt like I had some good coaches to help me along the way. And, eventually you play catch up with it. And, my passion for the game, because I was kind of new to it, I think continued to grow while some other players that, might have started a little bit later, their passion dwindled a little bit. And eventually you get to the same level and hopefully surpass them on the court. And I think that happened to me, but I think playing other sports growing up was certainly a benefit to me in that regard.
Yeah. So pretty excited about that Toronto Raptors win yesterday.
Yeah, it was good for the Raptors, good for Canada. I have obviously some friends up in Toronto, and you're from Toronto and you're one of them. But I'm happy for everybody that I know up in Canada. But I was also a little sad for the Warriors because of how it happened to them with all the injuries. I don't think anybody ever wants to see that.
No, of course not. I mean, when I was watching the game last night, it kind of like you always know that people come back to you and going to say, oh, but they didn't have their team and whatnot. But, that is also sports. I was talking to my sister about it, and she said that's sports. That's how it works, and, can't take away from what the Raptors did. But, of course, yeah, you want to win when everybody's at their best, so can't help but feel bad for those guys.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. It is sports. You have to learn how to play with what you have.
Yeah.
So good for the Raptors, good for Canada.
So let's get into some of these topics of discussion. You and I have been good friends for a while now. We've spent a lot of time on the tennis courts together, on and off. We're always talking just sports in general, as well as college tennis, and you being a coach, me being in the business. You know, the couple of things I want to discuss, starting with the first topic, which I think can be discussed at some length, is what should an athlete do when they get to college? What should they expect to achieve? What are the initial expectations versus what actually happens in college? Because I know that you and I have a similar pathway to some degree. I mean, we both played sports, different sports growing up. You know, hockey for me was the first sport I ever played growing up in Canada. Tennis was something I picked up a little bit later too, and I just continued to get better and better. And I think you and I share the same experience of we weren't burnt out when we got to college. When I got to college, I was more excited to play tennis than ever because I hadn't played as much as some of my other friends had. So, you know, what are those expectations when you get into college? What should they expect to achieve? What are they looking to do?
I think there's a huge variety in that depending on what level of tennis they're playing, what type of school they're going to, and what are the reasons that they chose that school. But I think every kid has to be realistic with what their expectations are. You know, when you're playing as a junior player in a sport like tennis, everything's about you. And when you get to college, that's not necessarily the case. You know, obviously coaches are going to do everything they can to help you as an individual player and as a person, but it's also about the team. It becomes a team sport, which, you know, a lot of these kids aren't used to. And so that's an adjustment right off the bat. And I think, you know, for a lot of kids, it's, you know, do you want to try to play pro tennis? Is that a realistic pathway? Do you want to try to go into business or graduate school after you finish your college career? You know, you have to be realistic with what your goals are, and you have to lay out a plan, I think, you know, for the course of 4 years that you can execute and do it day in, day out. And so you have to have that discipline and I think self-motivation in order to actually, you know, fulfill what you want to achieve in college. And I think that's the thing that a lot of kids, you know, need to understand is you're part of a team. You're going to be, you know, team focused. Obviously, they're going to do everything they can to help you, but it starts with the individual having that kind of self-motivation and discipline and then learning some more of those skills to help them further.
Yeah. So further expanding on that, like the balance of, you know, kid comes in, let's say they want to be a pro. The balance of athletics, academics, social life, how do they manage that? How do you feel that, do you feel that most players do a good job of that when they come into school with you?
I think a lot of players, you know, their freshman year tends to be the most difficult for them in terms of, you know, finding that time balance. You know, they're on their own for the first time, a lot of these kids. They don't have their parents telling them that, hey, you need to go to practice, you need to do your homework at this time. So, you know, there's a lot of discipline that comes into it from their own standpoint. And, you know, how they manage their time is obviously the most important part of it. I think as, you know, these college kids and athletes go through their time at college, they figure it out a lot more. And they understand what they really need to do, you know, how much they really need to study to achieve the grades that they want, how much they need to play during team practices, individual workouts. Maybe they want to go hit on their own extra to achieve their on-court goals. You know, they'll figure out what it actually takes, and I think it's an adjustment period for every player and athlete and student that comes in. So, but, you know, I think the biggest thing that they have to figure out is just, you know, I came here to be a student and I came here to be an athlete in whatever sport it is. And, you know, those are kind of 1A and 1B, or, you know, should be in terms of your priority. But you're also a college-age kid. You need to be a college kid. You need to be able to have that social aspect. That's why you go to college. That's why you play on a team. And, you know, what we talk about a lot with our kids is, hey, we expect you to do well in the classroom. We expect you to do well on the court. But, you know, we also want you to be a college kid and to enjoy your experience here. We want this to be the best 4 years of your life for every reason that you decide to come to the school.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so how much mentoring is being done by the coaches or even like the faculty, people around you, to make sure that there is structure and discipline, that make sure that the player can live that balanced life and that they can manage their time? Because what I see a lot of times is the time management is not very good. Players, people in general, just even adults, we have a rough time sometimes managing our time and getting things done. And making sure that we are able to pivot at the right time. And if it's raining outside, like, okay, there's no practice, what can I do in that time that maybe I was planning to do later to adjust? I think there's a lot of that adjustments required in college for any of the athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing is priorities. How do you prioritize your day? How do you prioritize the tasks that you have to get done on that day? And I think everybody, learns how to do that more and more throughout their life, and definitely throughout their college life. But I will say that I think there's more resources than there's ever been in college at every level, to help student athletes and to help students in general with that goal of prioritizing, what's really important, what can you maybe put off till tomorrow, what do you need to get done today. There's tutors, there's advisors, there's faculty advisors, there's office hours and availability to professors that have just gotten more and more as you go through time here. So the access to this information and help that I think all these kids have is greater than ever before. But at the end of the day, it's what you do with that information. It's great to have all the resources, and it's awesome that these kids have that available to them. But ultimately, it's still their decision. And am I going to take that information and use it and help that to plan my day to achieve the goals that I want to achieve?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that goes into the second half of what I want to talk about here with you is the failures and success that athletes have throughout their career as an athlete, playing their sport, as a student, as just in life in general, with all the things and obstacles that you go through. I think that it's really important to have the good people around you. I think failure is part of success. I know you have some real great insight about that, so I want you to talk a little bit about, just touching on exactly what you were saying right now, which was, you're going to figure it out. But I think a lot of people are afraid to fail, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are afraid to fail, and I mean, I think that's a normal thing. Nobody likes to experience losing. It's not fun. It's hard. But as an athlete, you're going to fail. You're going to lose. As a tennis player, especially if you're a professional player, you're going to lose every week unless you win the tournament. And that's a tough thing to mentally wrap your head around. Where I'm one of the best players in the world, and I'm losing every week. And as a college player, you may not necessarily lose every week because you're playing a dual match, but you're still going to lose. And you have to be okay with that. You have to understand that that's part of the process of becoming a better player. And a lot of people say you got to focus on the process of getting better and not necessarily worry about the results. And I would agree with that. I think when athletes of any sport, or in general, if like in business too, if you're so consumed with the result, you won't achieve the result you're worrying about. You need to focus on the right process and prioritize what you need to do to achieve your end result goal. But you can't focus on that. You can't get consumed with that. And I think that's a great thing that athletes have to learn. I mean, especially, as a tennis player, you're out there by yourself. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And so if you're afraid of losing, ultimately that result will probably find you if that's what you're thinking about constantly, and you have to work through that. And that's part of what athletics teaches you to do. Regardless of the sport, there's going to be adversity. There's going to be situations where you're not feeling great that day, or you're a little banged up, or something happened in school that you're not happy about, or whatever the situation is, and you still have to play. And it's how you manage those emotions and feelings, and can you maximize what you're trying to achieve on the court. And going through college and balancing the academic workload, the athletic workload. Do I focus my time on, am I trying to hang out with my friends a little bit more? Whatever the case may be, like, those are all decisions that you make that help you become a more mature person. And I think that helps you on the court, and vice versa. I think what helps, prioritize what you're trying to achieve on the court and having that discipline to go after your goals will help you in life too.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how many more times do you technically fail than succeed? You know, you can talk about tennis wins. Okay, you can win matches, lose matches on a daily or weekly basis. But even in life, like the big time goals and stuff that people have, like often, you know, they try to build a company or, yeah, you try to win a championship, you know, like just thinking about Kyle Lowry from yesterday's game. I mean, he was 7 times, you know, trying in the playoffs almost. I don't know how many years actually the Raptors out of those years that he's been there has made the playoffs, but almost every year. And, you know, just never really been able to get to the finals. Finally gets to the finals, finally wins the championship. And so, like, every year I think it feels like not, you know, it doesn't feel like much success until finally you get that one win. But he's won one out of however many years he's been in the league. And it's interesting how people take that. They tend to feel like they're just failing every time.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, you know, like taking Kyle Lowry, he was viewed by a lot of people as a failure in the playoffs, you know? Oh, the guy can play in the regular season, but when that pressure builds and there's those expectations of Toronto and the country and, you know, we want to win a national, you know, a world championship, well, does he shrink in that moment? And, you know, there's a lot of players that have to work through that, and he had to work through that. And, I mean, you look at his performance in the finals this year, and the guy showed up, the guy played. And, you know, does that finally silence some of those doubters that were against him? I don't know, but, you know, he's a world champion, he's an NBA champion, and, you know, I think that's probably good enough for him. And, you know, that's what it's all about. That's why you go through those sacrifices and through that adversity and those failures, because it makes that success all the more sweet, you know. And
I think he learned a lot
on the
from
flip
that
side,
stuff
I think,
too, right? I mean, I think he learned a lot from those failures to finally be able to succeed. Maybe if he didn't go through that, he wouldn't have been as successful this year.
Yeah, I think you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, you're not always going to win. You're not always going to have the success that you want. You're not always going to have things turn out the way you necessarily want them to. But if you learn from your mistakes, if you learn from when maybe you didn't win the match or the game that you thought you should, you know, then ultimately you're getting better and you're growing as a player and as a person, and those skills will take you through life a little bit better, hopefully. And I mean, that's why we have college sports. It's to help you become a better person and an athlete. It's not just about, you know, what you do on the court and or field in your respective sport. It's, you know, can that carry over and help you become a better person? And these are all skills and lessons that you have to learn, because there's going to be adversity in life. You're going to fail in life, and you're going to succeed in life. And, you know, that's the flip side of it too, is some people may be afraid of succeeding. And you also have to learn how to deal with that, because with success comes expectations. You know, the more successful you are, you know, you're expected to do that every year. Look at LeBron James. Well, I mean, you got to go to the finals every year. You got to win the finals every year.
Yeah.
But that's really hard to do in no matter what industry or field you're in. Like being a champion year in, year out is brutal. But you have to learn how to deal with that. And I think that's what sports teaches you as well. It helps you understand that success is good and sometimes failure is good. And you just have to, it's how you frame it and kind of how you view what's actually going on and where you can take that to help you become a better player, a better person.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. How often do you see players grow, you know, from freshman year to senior year? Do you see that most players figure it out along the way at some point?
Yeah, I think a lot of players figure it out, and I think a huge jump that you see is even from their freshman year to sophomore year. You know, just when kids come in as freshmen, they're trying to figure everything out. You know, it's a new environment for them. It can be overwhelming at times. That's where it's great to have all the resources that we now have in colleges.
Yeah.
But over the course of their 4 years in school, you can definitely see how they grow as an athlete, how they grow as a competitor, how they grow as a person and as a student. And, you know, by the time they walk out of there, I think they become an adult, hopefully, and they know how to manage situations and how to be mature and conduct themselves properly. And I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And you definitely see that growth, though, and that's the rewarding part as a coach, because that's what you want. You want to help these kids. Obviously, as a tennis coach, I want to help my kids succeed on the court, but just as important to me, I hope that they do really well in school, and I hope that they can succeed in whatever career path they choose to go down. And that's part of teaching them how to do some of this stuff, and taking the adversity or the success that you see on the court and understanding how to work through that, whether it's positively or negatively, and become a better and stronger person on the other side of it.
Yeah. No, I truly believe that everybody has to, get their hands dirty, actually do this process in order for them to realize, get these ideas, understand what happens. You got to grow as a person. You can only do that. There's only so much you can do when you listen to it in theory, and that it's just something that you got to learn along the way, and there's no other way to do it. Where I think that athletes can be a little bit more prepared is to understand what's going to come ahead of them. And I think when you start to understand what is going to happen, at least you have an idea. You're trying to understand what your goals are. You're coming in a little bit more prepared. And then if you come in prepared, there's only so much preparation that can be done until things start to unfold. So, I think that if more kids are prepared and understand what is to lie ahead, that they'll just be more ready for that, and then they'll be able to embrace it a lot better. And then all the things that you said, like those years as they go through the process, they're going to start figuring it out, and it's just going to be a good situation for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I think, what was it, Mike Tyson that said everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face?
Yeah.
That's what athletics is, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna get punched in the face a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I think people need a punch in the face. Some people need a punch in the face because they're in the dream world. No, it's true. It's just reality, right? Everything like we've talked about today is very black and white. Whether you're an athlete, it's wins and losses. Whether you're in business or you're going up for a job, and the real world is that, right? So some people they're living in a dream world. And to my point that I was saying, if they're not understanding what's coming ahead of them and really how the process works and what you're going to get out of college and what you should be getting out of college and all that, then they're not going to be ready, and they need a punch in the face. They need to get woken up.
Oh, I think you're right. I think, everything ultimately comes down to its production. Everything is production based. It's what can you do for me in the real world? That's how you get jobs. And that's, I think, why athletes do get a lot of jobs, is because they've shown that they can produce doing multiple things. They can manage their time. They can set goals. They can lay out a plan and follow through on that plan. And, that's what life is about, whether you're working or whatever you're doing in life. It's can you take it from A to Z? And do you have a plan that you can follow and be disciplined to get down that path and understand what you really need to do? And athletics, I think, is a great teacher of that.
Yeah, sports teaches you so much more than just, hitting a ball or swinging a bat or, shooting a basket. And I think through all this that we're talking about is it gives you that competitive edge. I know so many people, including myself, that love to hire, former athletes or current athletes to work with them because, they're used to getting, beat up a little bit. They're used to facing the adversity. They understand how to manage their time. It just puts you in that position, whether you like it or not, when you come to a university and you're expected to not only be a student like everybody else, but you are expected to perform on the field. It's just adding that extra pressure that I think is invaluable when you get to the real world, because that pressure is nothing like, I joke around with all my friends. I wish I could be in college forever, but when we were in college, I was a little bit different. I actually loved college, but a lot of people, but there was always times in everybody's time that whether they loved it or not, is they thought, I just want to get done with school. Like, I just want to get done with school. They don't realize how easy it is, but how difficult it feels at that time. And then when you actually get to the real world, you're like, crap, like this is something else. Like, I never thought I'd have this kind of pressure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think when you're in college, you're still in that bubble, right? You still have that support network, and not that you don't have a support network when you get out of college and you're in real life, but it's different. And going through that pressure and adjusting to that, and managing the academics, managing the athletics, figuring out how I really need to prioritize everything again. I think it sets you up better for success once that safety net kind of goes away. Once you're done with school and once you're out in the real world, because then it's on you. You got to do this stuff. You got to make your decisions, and you have to live with them. And I think athletics teaches you that.
Yeah. No. Well said. Well said. So, all right. I want to finish it off, Brian, with. I always want to give everybody an opportunity to share some real inspiring knowledge, whether it's a favorite quote that they like, or a philosophy, or a saying. So what do you live by? What's your go-to?
One of my favorite ones is something John Wooden said, and it's things turn out best for the people that make the best of the way things turn out. And I think that goes along really well with what we were talking about today. Not everything's going to go the way you want it to, but if you deal with it in a positive way, it always works out okay. So that's, I think, a good lesson for anybody, actually, but that's something I try to keep in mind every day.
Finding a solution to every problem, right? And making the best out of it.
That's right.
Yeah. No, Brian,
absolutely.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for your insight, and good luck with everything ahead.